Thanks for joining Multifamily Talks, a real page podcast. On this episode of the show, I'm joined by Alex O'Brien, Chief Executive Officer and one of the founding partners of the Cardinal Group. In the last decade, Alex has led Cardinal Group from being a small, student-focused organization to a diverse management portfolio that spans 89,000 beds and 35,000 multifamily units under management, and leads a team of over 1,600 employees. Our conversation explored what it was like to build a company of that scale while still prioritizing a company culture that values confident humility and delivers excellence. Alex also has a relatively unique perspective, having transitioned from the Marine Corps into student housing, which translates into his advocacy for veterans, but also his viewpoint on what it takes to be successful in multifamily, particularly in a time when Cardinal is driving hyper-specialization across their workforce and adjusting their leadership development model to accommodate this hyper-specialization. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, and with that, let's get to the show. Alex, thanks so much for joining. I appreciate you coming on. How are you today?
I'm good. Kids back in school this week, so kind of a weird end of summer. I think it just went so fast this year, but yeah, I'm great. How are you today?
I'm good. My kids are back in school, but in a different way. My kids are experiencing what you know so well this week, and that is experiencing turn, but as residents who are staying in their units. So it's craziness, and it kind of marks a whole full scale turnaround, not to put this on me, but a full scale turnaround of my career, starting off as a resident assistant, then being on the other side of the rental portion of it, and my kids going through it. It's just been bizarre, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
You tell them to give me a call. I'd love to have them working at Cardinal Group. So
okay, you said it. We'll put it out there. So let's kick off. It's funny. Normally when I do these conversations, I have folks kind of share their company story and then kind of followed up by their story. But in your case, yours is so intertwined that I'll kind of let you come at this how you want. Give me a little description of Cardinal and where it is and how you came to kind of form it.
Yeah, it's it's one of my favorite stories. It's been 15 years of just the most unbelievable journey, and just something I'm so proud and humbled by, and to see the amazing people that have come into this organization and built what we have today. And so, to think of where we started 15 years ago as this scrappy, no money, no idea what we were doing, just a dream of let's build a place where people will love to work. I mean, it was literally that simple. And I think some of that was just kind of the heart of the founders, including myself, who, I'd started my career in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And I actually tried to get a job. I realized I was unemployable, but I was working at this company, and I had a little bit of a run-in with a boss who, tried to give me some feedback, and instead of telling to me just giving me the feedback, like made it super formal in an email. And I was like, yeah, no, this isn't going to work for me. And so, I said, I want to kind of recreate what I had in the Marine Corps, but just in a much safer environment, not like that, but like all of the things that I loved about being a Marine. And so you see a lot of those intertwined and weaved through the Cardinal story. And, kind of my role as one of the founders with Jason and Eric and Dell, and where we started and where we are today is just, it's pretty remarkable and something I'm just really proud to be a part of.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I was going through your website and just the language that's there, and there's several things you said we're going to come back to. We're definitely coming back to being humble. Like that's a string I absolutely want to pull out because it's prominent in all of your messaging. But as I was reading it, there were times where I'm like, am I reading a leadership book from someone who just came out of a military organization? Not from, because there's such an element of discipline with humility that comes through your messaging, and we'll tease all that out. But you mentioned that's been a 15-year journey. What, for those who might not be familiar with Cardinal Group, like what I know you specialize in multiple different verticals and that, but what's the scope of Cardinal these days?
Yeah, I remember being at an industry event in student housing, and Bill Bayless, who is just awesome. I know obviously you've had experience with Bill and kind of the godfather of student housing, but he was giving this kind of cocktail toast. And he said, well, I love what new guys in the space, like this group Cardinal group, are doing. And I was like, someone's actually heard of us. Like,
that was my name.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But, we still get that, we still kind of consider ourselves an industry outsider. And I think that fuels a lot of what we do and our passion of being a disruptor. But yeah, we've built what I consider one of the best operating platforms in the country by focusing on a really people-centric approach to the business. Both the two people I care a lot about, our team members, which I'm just obsessed with, and then the resident experience and can we make lives better by running the real estate better? And so just that belief and that kind of focus has led us to build, an NMHC top 50, which next year hopefully will be a top 30 and a top 20, as we go. But really focused primarily on and originally on student housing, which was our bread and butter and our starting point. I guess when you're 24, when you start a business, all you actually know is student housing. So, that was, I don't know if that was strategic or just required, but, and so we do quite a bit of student housing, one of the largest companies in the country that do it. And then also multifamily, BTR, off-post military housing, on-campus housing. So, we do a little bit of everything. And really a recent growth into affordable housing, which was really a proud moment for us because it had less to do with our experience as an affordable operator and more to do with our culture, and specifically groups that sought us out that said, we want you to evangelize affordable housing as well, to make it where people want to work in that industry, where people want to take care of the residents. It was very mission minded. And as you said, when you read a lot of our material, like being mission minded is all what Cardinal's all about, and I think that is directly out of the front page of a military leadership book of like really keeping people focused on like, why are any of us doing this? Why does all this matter in the grand scheme of things? And that's where, focusing on this mission of serving people is so important.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on and have the conversation was, we've had conversations privately in the past and also just some of your LinkedIn posts that have just been, as you put it, mission minded. Like this is bigger than just running real estate. And, I've seen you do breakdowns on like, what does the ownership of real estate actually look like? And that's a passion point for me. Both my parents were educators and on the college level, but their entire retirement was basically through California State Retirement Plan, which had invest heavily in multifamily. So it's been a big thing. But one of the things I noticed from our previous conversation, as well as on the website and doing my things, is like you really want to be the industry employer of choice.
Yeah.
What is that to you? What does that mean? Like expand out on that and kind of get into that culture.
Yeah. And if you read our mission, and this has been true from the beginning, the founding of Cardinal is actually hilarious where, we're sitting around in a room with 5 people that work there. 4 of them are founders. One of them is my brother who was required to work, more indentured than anything. But, and we're talking about culture. We're talking about core values. Like what does it mean to work with this team? Not for us, with us, like be on this team. And that's always been the case. And so I think, when you're so deliberate and intentional and passionate about that relationship of employer, employee, like what that means. I mean, I truly use the word obsessed because the disproportionate amount of time we talk about how can we make this a better place to work is probably the most strategic thing we talk about. And so, I think why it matters is one, our mission is it's about people. And so to be the best place to work in any industry for anyone. And, I've told this, I thank you for sharing about your parents. My father was a postal worker. And I always tell people he definitely taught me how to work hard. Yeah. I mean, there was an unbelievable work ethic. Like my old man is just a freaking grinder. Like that dude just put in hours, never complained, never woe is me. I mean, that dude just worked. But I don't think he ever loved his job, And so to me, it was like the Marine Corps taught me not just work hard, but like I loved it. Like I loved being a Marine. And you start reading all these stats on people who just hate their jobs. They feel invisible. It's like, it's heartbreaking. And so I think that's where my passion came from of like, I don't just want to work hard. Like I want people to love their job. And so, it's weaved throughout all of Cardinal. We've certainly focused on leaders that share that passion. So it's not just me. I mean, in fact, it's up and down the layers of the organization of people who share that same passion of not just I'll work hard and I'll kick ass and we're going to do a good job, but like love their job, love the people they get to work with. And so, last year we were the first and highest rated real estate service business to ever win Glassdoor's Best Place to Work. So number 54, thank you, out of 700,000 companies that they monitor. Wow. So that felt pretty good. Of course, I'm already asking my team, I'm like, well, how do we get to 40? They're like, damn it, just enjoy it. Just enjoy this. But I think why that matters is if you look around the industry, like it's hard to find talent and attract and keep talent in this industry. And so it's not just we want Cardinal to be a great place to work and all of our competitors suck. It's like we actually want to put pressure on our competitors so that they continue to follow our lead and the whole industry gets better. And so as people look, we always joke multifamily chooses you don't choose it, but like,
so true.
We want people to be passionate about an industry that you literally get to work in people's homes. I can't imagine a better calling as a career professional to say like what we do matters. In fact, when they made their essential list during COVID, we were essential. Yep. It's like we matter. And so our kind of message of the industry's employer of choice is like, we want the whole industry to focus and follow the lead of Cardinal Group. Like we want to be the standard bearer, and we're running out front, and that means it's crazy, and it's tough, and we're probably going to make some mistakes, but we will pick up that mantle of leadership because we care that much about the people of this industry, and of course the people of Cardinal Group.
So speaking of the people, and I want to go into something you actually touched on, and also it's something that I read on your website that I was just like, oh, we got to dive in this. It's like, passion and determination are far more important than natural ability. You follow it up by we never quit, we always get back up. Like it's a message that resonates with me personally. But when we're the number one thing I hear from leaders in the industry as far as a challenge goes, we always ask like, what's your biggest challenge? Unequivocally, it is turnover. It's the human capital that we have within the business. That natural, or probably that passion and determination, in your experience in relationship to the business, is that something that you're hiring for? Is that something you're developing once they're in? What's your approach to that?
Yeah, well, I think both, and I think we're, as my good friend and our chief people officer, Peter Lynch, says, like, we're in the age of authenticity. And I think people can kind of sniff out a little bit more. And I do think people want to be proud of the company they work for. They want to feel like the hours they're dedicating matter, and so I do focus a lot on like, that passion and determination are going to get you through a lot of the stuff that we have to just go through as teammates and in an industry such as ours. And so, we try to hire for it. We definitely try to teach it. I always tell people, if you did, and what you probably did during your interview, when someone said, why do you want to join Cardinal Group? You probably said the culture, right? Like that's a common answer. And I said, well, now the bad news is you're responsible for the culture of this business. Like you can't say you're attracted to this, to what we do, to read the website and say that motivates me, and then get here and be, to get here and be a gossip or to, put yourself first or not be a great teammate or not be passionate. It's like, no, like you joined because you love the culture. Now it's your responsibility too. And so, I'm very big on turnover is fine. I actually like it's not a bad thing. In fact, I think the companies that villainize people who are out looking for new opportunities, that's not how a relationship works. And so, I'm pretty clear with my team and the people who joined this company. Like, I don't want to be the longest job in your career journey. I want to be the best. So if you're here for 2 years and you have to go chase a new passion or desire or new opportunity or higher pay or better position or even at a competitor, good for you. That's awesome. And so, no one's signing up for a 20-year contract here. They're signing up for, while you're here, you're going to be passionate. You're going to be determined. You're going to be a great teammate. You're going to follow the values. And then when you leave, someday someone's going to ask you, what's your favorite job you've ever had? And literally my passion is that you say Cardinal Group. The people you got to work with, the challenges you overcame, the training we provided, the personal care that we showed, like, that's awesome. And so I hate this like quid pro quo thinking that the only reason you treat your employees well is so they stay forever. It's like, no one's staying forever.
Right.
Like there's going to be turnover. Like there's going to be, especially great people. They always have opportunities. Like, it's like good, they're always like, someone's always calling them, offering them the next big thing. And that's cool. Like, and so we have this policy called red carpet in, red carpet out. We're going to
awesome.
roll it out when you get here, and we're going to celebrate you, and we're going to embrace you arms wide open. And when you leave, we're going to thank you for your time, for your commitment, for the care, the relationships. And, I love seeing ex-Cardinal teammates out there just crushing, kicking ass at their new job, doing big things. And if we can say Cardinal was a small part of their success, like that fires me up. That gets me motivated. So
that's a success story for you. Yeah, it was interesting when I was, again, kind of going through things. I noticed that one of the things that you have highlighted was actually a Cardinal alumni page on LinkedIn, which I thought was really interesting. I've back in the day, I worked for Oakwood. We've got our own alumni group on Facebook instead of LinkedIn, but it is, you do see these little hubs in the industry or people flow in and out of, and that was really, really cool to see. So let's talk about, getting the talent and not necessarily always the internal. What is it like when you and Cardinal are looking for that talent from the outside, whether it be someone in the industry today? I'd imagine in the student housing side, it's a lot of people who are outside of the industry coming in for their first time. At least it was back in the day when I was doing it a long, long time ago. What are those traits that Cardinal's looking for in that ideal employee? We've mentioned being humble, but what is it, those traits?
Well, I think the humility is, when people ask me, one, your good friend Darren and I were talking. He loves to tease me because he's like, no one can remember 10 core values. There's too many. You need like 3. I was like, well, I'll do my thing, you do yours. But I think when people ask me of the 10 core values, which one's the most important, I always say number 10, be humble.
Be humble.
Because in humility, all other things can flow. And I think that, one of the things we really value at Cardinal is intellectual curiosity and, a growth mindset. We have this kind of do more with less idea. And that's not, you're not going to get the resources, that you're going to have a winner's mentality. There's kind of this victors and victims mentality of like, we want people who think like victors, who have that winner's attitude, who have that growth mentality, who have that intellectual curiosity. But that all starts with humility. If you're not humble enough to admit you don't know everything, you're not perfect, you're going to make mistakes, there's room for growth. Like, room for growth is a growth mindset. Yeah. And that all flows through humility. And so I think it's just so important to find in leaders where, and I was telling this to someone yesterday, like I know a good team always beats a group of great individuals. A team working together is really how you win. And so, we want people to have that kind of winner's attitude, that humility, and that ability to operate on a team. And we look for those, and we're pretty targeted in our recruiting in terms of like people we know demonstrate those traits that we're trying to attract to Cardinal Group. It's a little bit like, I talk a lot about, well, certainly the Marines, that's my love,
Right.
But also if you look at like what the Navy SEALs have done, it's like, does anyone join the Navy SEALs and then say, whoa, this is way harder than I thought? It's like, no, like literally the whole marketing is how hard it is. Like, and so I think we're so intentional with our brand so that people know what they're getting into here. Like if you're just going to come here and, put yourself first, make it all about you, be looking for the pat on the head for your ideas all the time. It's like that. Our brand is very clear. That's not what we stand for. And so I think when you're intentional with that brand, what you're looking for is the exact people who are looking for Cardinal. It's like you almost like make that recruiting match in advance, because when someone comes and says to me, which happens a lot, which is, always amazing, of like, I just want to be a part of this team. Like that's the exact attitude that we're looking for in a person. And that's why we built the brand and kind of the external messaging that you talked about, whether on the website, on our LinkedIn, on all kinds of leaders at Cardinal posting on different social avenues. So it all works together. Like we're intentional about who we want. And in that, I think those people are naturally attracted to Cardinal too.
So it's interesting because when I look back on my own career, it certainly hasn't been perfect over the years. There's been major bumps at different roadblocks, and every single time when I go back and kind of do the postmortem and say kind of what happened, I was taught by Keith Duncan here at RealPage, a few years ago, the concept of confident humility, of which is different than humble confidence. It's you come at it from a humble perspective, but you're confident in your actions. And when I've had my road bumps, I almost always flip to the other way, and maybe humbleness went completely away. In honest, how do you balance? Because it's interesting. You guys won a lot of awards, which can be considered bragging, which is kind of the opposite of humility. How do you balance that, especially with your employees and your team members, of building that confidence of hey, you're doing great things, you got that next step, while still saying, but it's not about me.
Yeah. I had a really good friend. I'll give him a shout out. He probably won't listen to this. Brian Schweers, one of the best Marines, just a great leader, a great man. We've known each other since college, and he's been just an amazing friend, and also just serving this country for a long time. And so a lot of love for him. But he jokingly once told me, for how amazing I am, it's amazing I've stayed this humble. So I always think about that. People are like, I'm so sweet that, and humble. It's like, that's, well, I think it always comes back to what you're confident in. And so I think I'm pretty damn confident in the team that I have at Cardinal and the culture that we have. And so I'm not individually confident. I don't know if I could go toe to toe with these amazing business leaders and all these smart guys and gals at other companies. That's not my confidence. My confidence is in the team that we've built, following the values we have. Like, we can win, and we can be the best, and it drives us all to new heights together. And so, we use a lot of like mountaineering terms. Maybe that's because we're Coloradans, Denver, but we talk about just the climb, like working together on this climb that we're on. And it's been a hell of a crazy one to go from, where we started, totally organic, all of our own growth, as the founders and team of this business, to what we've built. And so I think the past success can give you some confidence. But when you're at base camp and you look up and you see the mountain still left to climb, that should give you some humility too. And so I think you can say, past success and what we've done, there's a lot to like. And, there's a lot of these little useless plastic trophies sitting on a shelf somewhere. But what gives me the biggest joy is knowing every one of those trophies was a team effort.
Yeah.
Someone at Cardinal that followed our best idea wins culture, that collaborated with their other teammates, that worked together to achieve things that others couldn't achieve. And then that won some award. And so, yeah, I'm so confident in the team that we have here at Cardinal. And I don't even know if that's humble confidence. That's just straight up confidence. Like I'm just amazed at the talent we have, the people we have that individually are humble in their own rights as leader. But like when you see them standing in formation side by side is just this amazing team of leaders. Like I'm in awe that I get to lead them. Honestly, like it's such a cool part of my own journey to be surrounded by amazing people. So it's really fun right now.
Well, congrats on building that team. That not everybody can say that. It's awesome. So let's shift the conversation just a little bit, and I'll go because you started off in student housing, migrated into multifamily, and this is something that I've always been baffled by, quite honestly. I remember going to, I think it was an interface conference. It was like my first student conference, probably 12 years ago, down in Austin. And I sat in the room and I was shocked that there were no multifamily developers in the room. Like it just blew me away that it was this segmented business over here. Because as you well know better than most, that is your next renter. Like guess where they're going after student housing? They're going in an apartment. So my question to you is like, what are the learnings that you've been able to take as an organization from what's happening in the student housing world and apply to multifamily? And then the one I'll ask after that is I want you to put bring out your crystal ball and say, what do you think is the next one that needs to happen?
Oh man. Who's going to listen to this? I don't want my competitors like stealing.
Probably no one. Let's be real.
Well, for all 7 of you listening, no, I'm just kidding. Listen, I think that one of the things we talk about even to our multifamily clients is like this concept of like we house tomorrow's renters, like today, like we house them today, and we're learning so much about them, especially at the scale. There's only a few like really scaled up student platforms, and I think that trend will continue where those that have like really built operational expertise at scale like should continue to grow and achieve more. And so you learn so much about 19-year-olds and what's funny is if you want to know about 19-year-olds, you just got to go back and study high schoolers. If you look at trends, everything from readily available smart home technology, kind of off the shelf, the Googles and Amazons of the world. It's like, well, kids have that in their house,
right?
And then they go to college, and now they're expecting certain features. Think about when you were young. It's like, I don't know if you have siblings. I have 3 brothers. It's like, well, we all shared bedrooms and bathrooms, right? So look at the original student housing, 4x2s and shared. And now what happened? Well, every kid in America suddenly was, getting their own bathroom. Exactly. And so then what happened in student? Well, now there's a demand for
4x4s, 2x2s,
bed to bath parity. Exactly. So I think that the multifamily guys would be smart to acknowledge that, our understanding of renters is really shaping what should be what developers are talking about right now. If you're building apartments in, attractive cities that really, there's only, call it a dozen or 15 of them that really kind of draw postgraduate students. Right. And, those are major cities in America. There's more than 15, but you get my point. But, what are those renters going to want over the next 2, 3, 5, 7 years? Because if you're a developer, you're planning that now.
Right.
And so I think, at scale, again, we're over 90,000 students that we get to take care of each year. And we've learned a lot watching over the last 10 years, the change in demand, the change in operational kind of workflows that we have. I think the most interesting one that the whole industry is probably talking about now is certainly centralization, and this kind of the digital interaction that we're having between the real estate, our company, and the renter. And so, 10 years ago, people thought, well, you don't need SEO and SEM. It's like, really? That's funny. And so if you watched 19-year-olds' behaviors over the last decade, you would have learned kind of where the industry is going.
Yeah.
And we've done that. And in fact, I think because we've done that so well, that's why so many other opportunities in multifamily have opened up for Cardinal, because smart groups are recognizing, what a transferable skill that is to go from operating student housing to operating all these other asset classes, including some niche sectors like co-living or BTR, stuff like that. So, I think, watching what 20-year-olds are comfortable with in terms of digital interaction, like you got to watch that trend. Yeah. I mean, everything is going that direction. And we're certainly trying to be on the forefront, a leader of what's happening in this centralization. I think you and I have talked before. I'm calling it specialization, which is very accurate. That's what it is, but it's certainly a trend. And I've been telling groups, and I've heard other groups, including large groups and our competitors, who say, "Oh, no, that's never going to happen." And I said, I think that the best analogy is this wave is coming, and you can build a dam or you can build a raft, but like the wave's coming, and we're choosing to use our resources to build a raft. We're not trying to fight the future. We're trying to embrace the positive impacts that specialization and centralization are going to have on our residents, on prospects, and on our people. We're not trying to build a dam to fight the future from coming. Like the wave's coming. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. We actually just commissioned a study, or actually just got the results of a study back at RealPage, where we studied generations and how they want to interact with properties. It was, designed specifically around renters and matches U.S. Census. And that Gen Z renter that was out there, which is that student housing going into that, was interesting. And I think this number is correct. If not, it's not materially off. 73% of that generation don't want to talk to you. They literally don't want to pick up the phone and call you. They don't want to walk in the office. They want to be able to do everything digitally. And I think we're coming up against a challenge in multifamily that I think student has a unique window into. And I'm not going to ask you to give your trade secrets away in this, but how do you service that resident and still build community?
Yeah. Well, I think you have to meet, my kids were asking me, which is amazing. I love that, how industrious they are already. And we were talking about some business idea, which once I told them they had to pay me to drive them in their lawnmower around, they canceled that business idea. But I said, what does every business need? And it's computers, or blah, 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 office space, whatever. I said, a customer. Every business actually needs a customer. Everything else is kind of fungible. And so I think we have to focus on our residents. So many of the things I hear, like we forget the most important piece, which is the resident. Yeah. And in a lot of ways, we're trying to create this resident experience where we map out what the resident wants. I'm like, no, it's not an or, it's an and. It's got to be more and, because the whole every business now is challenged with creating a resident journey in which the resident gets to choose their own adventure. And so I think that we have to keep that in mind of, and to your point, 73% of renters want to do everything digitally. It's like kinda, but they get to choose. They get to choose when they want that human interaction, when they want to build community. And we have to build a model and a system that has some cost controls around it. We're running a business with real estate, and so it's not unlimited resources. And so we have to build a model that can do more more for the residents, create these bespoke customer experiences, and try to not limit the residents too much in kind of what we offer to them. And so it's a real challenge. And I think that when I hear people talk, they basically get pretty lazy with their like demographic limitations. Like, well, millennials all want this.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, they don't. Like, I don't even know two people who want the same thing, let alone a whole freaking like cohort of like millions of people. It's like, so you can use data and you can use like projections, but the truth is like what everyone does want is a custom experience. And that's what we're seeking to provide. And we think specialization, hyper specialization through kind of some centralized team members and a technology platform is the only way I think we can meet customers where they want to be met in the future. So,
yeah, you use that term when we kind of had the pre-call on that hyper specialization, which I think is a great description of what most people consider centralization. I always joke all the time, people are centralizing through decentralization. But that specialization is something that has me thinking to the next level. Now, you came in from outside the industry, came in from Marine Corps, extreme discipline, let's get stuff done. I came in more from the industry side of it. I started as a resident assistant, ended up getting hooked up with a group that brought me in as a leasing manager, and then the wheels were off. But the traditional employee development model, the traditional career path, in my opinion, breaks when it comes to hyper centralization. And the one that has me really thinking a lot now is that jump from what traditionally be community manager to regional manager, whatever you call them, because you were exposed to everything on the community. So that was really your training ground to get trained up. How are you approaching that potential gap that exists if everything's hyper specialized and offsite?
I mean, it's literally the $1 million question, or way more than that, because, it's such an important part of this. And I think that OJT, on the job training aspect of developing people, has been tried and true in our industry for a long time. And I think it's, if the assistant community manager is the future community manager, and that position by and large starts to be eliminated or repurposed, it's like, where do you find the next CM? And so, since you tied a few of these things together, like if you think about my background, like I spend a lot of time now working with veterans, transitioning veterans who are getting out of the service. And I talk to them a lot about transferable skills.
Right.
And what are the things that you've done and learned that are going to set you up for your next job? And you asked earlier, like, to me, a job requirement isn't someone taught you Yardi, therefore, I want to hire you. I want passion. I want determination. I want resiliency. I want a heart for the residents, a servant leadership. It's like, those aren't skills unique to because you grew up in the industry. Right. And so I think, if anything, centralization is going to open up a bigger conversation on what are the skills we need to take care of our residents and create these communities where, if you read our mission, it's not just the team members love working here, it's to build communities where residents thrive, right? And so what are the skills at each position on site and throughout all of our organization that are going to set you up to be able to do that? And so, frankly, I think there's a lot of cowardice in our industry where people don't want to have the hard conversation of like, things are changing.
Yeah.
And I feel personally responsible to the people of Cardinal to make sure that we are arming them with the job skills of the future. And it's not just, some of the more technical stuff that they're doing, because, a lot of stuff's going to be automated.
Yeah.
Like it just is. I mean, I'd hate to know the budget RealPage has on AI and automation. Don't even say it. You're not even allowed to. You're not allowed to. But like, think about each job function we do. And it's like that whole workflow. It's not just the job title. It's not just we're changing the community manager's job, it's like each of the workflows are changing. And so my responsibility to the people of Cardinal is to arm them with modern and valuable skills that I think are going to make them a big success at this business, I think in this industry, but even beyond that. And so when I say like, hey, we're going to be working with a lot of data, BI, yep. AI, we're going to be heavy focus on resident experience, on customer service. It's like, I just listed a lot of valuable skills that are going to make you very employable and very successful, and so we can't get caught up in just, the current job functions are taught on site and then they become the next kind of move up. And what we definitely know, and I've seen this at Cardinal, is through hyper specialization, we're creating a ton of new jobs.
Right.
And we're actually breaking the old geo model of like, well, I have a team member in Tuscaloosa. I live in Tuscaloosa. And my only job, my current options have always been, the on-site. I can work on site and hopefully become a regional for other communities in this area.
Close, yeah.
Now you can do anything. You can do anything remote. You can do anything from afar, and not just corporate jobs, but even jobs that still have an on-site function tied to them. And so I think through centralization, it's easy to focus on the fear of the change it's going to have to the jobs without also being really excited about all the doors it's going to open up. And so I'm trying to get my team excited on the new job skills, the new opportunities, the new career paths that are now being created. And if you focus on that, I think there's, you can kind of overcome a little fear with that excitement, as opposed to just saying, well, if there's no leasing agent at that property, who's being trained to become the leasing manager? It's like the whole model is going to like morph a little bit. And I think companies with good cultures, good change management, good communication strategies, they're going to do just fine. The companies who just are who just send the email that say, starting September 1st, your job has changed. It's like, that's not going to work. And so I think that what I learned in COVID is all the hard work we did in 2015 and 16. And so like when you spend time building a great culture, it pays off in those moments. And I think now more than ever, I'm excited that the work we've done over the last 5 years to build a great company culture, trust, excitement is going to actually set us up to be successful in what I do think will be a continually rapidly changing environment in our industry. So, and then maybe one quick reminder, this has always been happening,
True.
Andrew, like when you joined the industry, 29 years ago. Yeah. I mean, they were probably training you to like mow the grass, they're like, all right, like, we have all it's like, well, no one does that anymore. It's like, that's all outsourced. And it's like, think about the evolution of our industry of things we used to do that we, and that this is just the next evolution because of just the readily available technology, and I think where I get really excited, and our COO, Kara, talks a lot about this is, and she worked at Aimco and kind of worked through different parts of the industry, but 20 years ago, there was already centralization.
Accounting was being centralized for sure.
When we think like these are new concepts, it's like, yeah, except for the 90s when this already happened. But the choice that people were making, in my assessment, was you can save money or you can create a better resident experience. Those were like almost put in odds, right? And it was like, we're going to set up a call center and it's going to frickin' suck. And the residents are not going to frickin' like it. And the prospects aren't going to like it, but it's cheaper. People are like, oh, it's cheaper. Oh, we should do that. But now it's literally, we can actually focus on efficiency. We can do things that should create some, savings. And then, oh, by the way, the residents are going to love it. And it's like, so it's no longer, again, if you think about what I said, it's not an or, it's an and. Right. It's like you can do both. And you create new job skills and new jobs and break the geo limitations. It's like when you put all those together, it's like the residents, the deal, the clients, the people, it's like you can create these win-win-win scenarios. That's why we've focused our centralization not just on one part of that, but when we say CX3, it's that all of the experience of those three cohorts that we care about, the client, the resident, the customer, and the Cardinal team member, we actually think that this program benefits all three when done properly. And so in order to keep our team talking about that, that's the brand we even put on our internal centralization platform.
That was the CX3.
That's CX3. Smart, some really cool creative marketing people at Agency 53 came up with that, not me. I think I was going to call it like Space Force or something.
I think that one might already be taken. I'm just going to say.
Yeah. All right. Fine.
Okay. So we're kind of wrapping up a little bit here on time, but I've got two questions that I kind of ask everyone towards the end. Number one, obviously, I mean, you mentioned RealPage. Yes, we do technology. We do all the things. So I have to ask this one. What's the technology out there today that isn't necessarily super wide adopted? You might not even have it yet, but what's the technology today that you're excited about the potential for?
Oh, wow. Well, one, obviously, to give the plug to RealPage. I mean, what a great partner of ours for a long time. And you guys just do so much and very resilient, I think, to watch as the company's gone from public to private to kind of navigating the opportunities. And it's been great to be a partner of yours. And so
thank you.
Very, very appreciative of not just the company, which I don't know the company, but I know the people of the company. And so the people of RealPage have been just amazing and good friends and good support. And so with that said, I always say, there's kind of the three circles of like what you know, what you don't know, and what you don't know, you don't know. Right. And so what you don't know, I think is huge. And so that's like the big circle. But I think that as Jeff Bezos once said, in a time of predicting the future, you should focus on what you know will not change. And so, I think any technology that focuses on creating an amazing resident experience that meets the residents where they want to be met, that meets prospects where they want to be met, I'm excited about. That's not going to change. And so there's all kinds of like crazy things I can't predict, but what we do know is what people will want. And so we focus a lot on that of like, what are these things that we think will always be true? And how can technology help us get there? And so certainly, you have to focus on AI, and it's funny to see the percentages of people who have adopted AI. It's still like zero. It's like you downloaded ChatGPT, you told it to write like a funny article, and then you stopped using it. Like that. No, that's not like what we're talking about here. And I think that as I look to the future, like all of these products using generative AI around. How we meet the resident where, both no time limitation, no geo limitation, no in-person limitation, like those AI tools are going to be just unbelievably valuable to creating this like bespoke custom resident experience. And so that all gets me really excited. It's very noisy right now.
Right.
Like AI is such the buzzword that it's like, hey, here's some AI. It's like, that's not AI.
It's like a chart. Like, yeah.
That's actually a human just texted me back, but I think there's a lot around AI technology. We actually have, and I don't know what all of our competitors are doing, but I think if you look at what we've done, it should tell you how much we're embracing this. Our CTO is now our COO. I mean, I was so confident that operations is going to flow through technology that we promoted our chief technology officer to actually run operations, because there is no operations without technology, and those can't be separated anymore. It can't be your systems, IT, and data are like the people you call when you need a help desk ticket. It's right. Like, no, they're in the fight. In fact, they're like part of the tip of the spear now, like with operations, like with the people. And so, and then two, we have an in-house director of AI. And his entire job is looking at all business processes that touch our residents. So, I mean, I think that job will be hitting job boards around our industry relatively soon, honestly. So,
yeah, I mean, we take a similar view, and it's interesting. One of the focus of AI, and you said it is generative AI. Well, that's one type of AI. Like, and yes, it can help on the leasing process, but it can help a lot of other things too. We're actually just as focused on the back end processes. Like, how do we help you be better as an organization and more efficiently as an organization, not just when it's, directly touching a resident, but all of the other things you do that, a resident doesn't necessarily see, but it affects them at the end of the day. A final account statement, closing out the month end books, all those kind of things. There's a lot of focus around that too.
Yeah. I heard a great quote, and it said, AI is not going to take your job, but a human powered by AI might. Like this idea that AI is going to make all of our job functions and our team members, when we arm them with the skills, the tools they need, like it should make people better at their job. It should open up all new opportunities. And so, we're not running from it. We're certainly trying to help our team members with the tools they need. And my guess is, I told this to our centralization team. I'm like, you guys are going to be real popular in the industry, because I do think that this right now, I hear some of our competitors, they're like, well, we took a regional manager and told him or her, like, as a side job to focus on centralization. It's like, no, or we asked 3 people how they're using Chat GPT and that's our AI. It's like, no, it's a real resource investment right now for the companies that I think are going to get this right. So
I agree. Okay, so last question, because I want to honor your time. I warned you about this in advance, and then I, again, kind of did my research on your website and realized you have an entire bookshelf on your website, which is the first time I've actually seen that. So I'll be curious to see if your answer's on your bookshelf, not that I memorized it. If you could recommend one book to someone who is moving their way up through a leadership ladder within multifamily, what's the one book you would recommend that everybody make sure they read?
Well, I am rereading Extreme Ownership right now, which is just super motivating, but which is just awesome. And I think that's probably a good book for anyone, just to teach you self accountability. But I think the leadership book that I would recommend, and I think I've given the same answer for 5 years, but is Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Yeah. Because I think that the ability to connect and care for people personally is just such an important part of your leadership journey. And so, I tell this story a little bit where I was at the Denver Children's Museum and I saw one of my old Marines, a corporal that I had worked with, and we had a few deployments, which obviously built a lot of trust. But he told my wife, he said, my life is better because I got to work for your husband. Wow. And I was like, ooh, it's a little dusty in here, but I was like, there is no greater joy than that feeling that as a leader, you impacted someone's life and I think Radical Candor gives a great kind of framework to think about all the things that you have to do. But it all starts with this awful 4-letter word that you're not allowed to say in business, which, I cuss a lot. So
it's all good.
You're probably wondering which 4-letter word it is, but it's love. It's this actual feeling that the people you get to work with, you love them, you do, you care about them personally. You want the best for them. It's not you want them just to work for you and make the company better. It's you want what's best for them. And so I think Radical Candor, with this idea of once you care personally, you can take the relationship to a whole new level, because once that person knows you have their best interest in mind, they'll accept feedback, they'll accept tough critiques at times. And so I think building that culture in which people know, you know what, someone here cares about me. Someone here has my back. Someone here, like that's, I do have a dog in the fight. Like someone actually wants what's best for me, my family, my life. Like what an amazing feeling. And in return, the leader gets that feeling that someday they're going to know that person's life's better because you were their boss. Like what an amazing, feeling for everyone involved. And so my greatest moments in my career have been that feeling that someone has told me, you know what, like you made my life better by working for you. And it's intoxicating. It feels so good to know you're changing people's lives for the better. So,
well, A, it's a fantastic read if you haven't read it out there. B, it actually is on your bookshelf on the website. That's one I did actually recognize. I'm like, oh, they got Radical Candor on there. And yeah, it comes down to, no, they won't care what you know until they know how much you care. Like it's just that message. But, Alex, thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. Thank you for pushing the industry forward the way you have. It's been a fantastic conversation. And I hope, 6 months or so down the road, we get to do it again.
I'd love that. And thank you so much for having me. I know you got, there's so many great people in our industry, and I know there's a lot of voices that you can pass the mic to. And so I'm honored to be here with you, and thank you again.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Multifamily Talks, a Real Page podcast. As always, the views expressed are those of the individuals participating and not those of Real Page.